Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Former MP, of course, big Liz Truss fan. She's just made history again, this time for being the first former MP to lose her seat in... Sorry, Prime Minister, correct me. Prime Minister to lose her seat in 90 years.
An astonishing loss. I think her majority was either 23 or 26,000. There was a strong independent who was quite well known locally who stood against her between that and the reform vote. I suppose it's no surprise, really, that she may have been under threat, but still a surprise that it actually turned and she wasn't successful in keeping her seat because she was determined to do so.
And what do you think her sort of feeling will be this morning and where will she go next? And do you think many in the party will miss her?
Hard to say. I mean, I think the initial feeling will be, oh, my gosh, you know, she's been an MP since, I think, 2010. That's a long stint and a huge life change is coming for her. So I think the initial reaction will be the personal. But knowing Liz as I do, she won't dwell on that for long. What I hope we don't end up in is a situation of blame, finger-pointing, further division, I was right all along kind of rhetoric, because I think at this point... it looks completely unedifying for a party that's just taken a massive loss. I hope we can just take a moment of reflection and figure out how we're going to come together. How
long is a moment of reflection? Because we're expecting at some point this morning, you know, under the clouds and rain on Downing Street, some sort of resignation from Rishi Sunak as PM. It's bound to be, what, 20 minutes before someone throws their hat in the ring for the leadership contest? How long is your pause of reflection, do you think, going to be?
Well, hearing some of the victory speeches last night from individual MPs, it feels like a few already have.
Name and shame?
I don't need to, do I? I don't need to. Your viewers are smart enough to have figured that out for themselves.
One of the names that won't be there, Penny Mordaunt, of course. A big name there, Arlene, to have gone.
Yeah, and I think she would have certainly put her name forward for leadership. It's interesting, Tom Tugendhat did retain his seat. I think he'll figure in the mix, as, of course, will Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman. So those three, I think you'll definitely see their names coming forward.
And Jeremy Hunt, perhaps.
And Jeremy Hunt, of course, yes.
Yeah. You're quite impressed. Not only has Jeremy Hunt survived against the odds here, but everybody seems to be saying, by and large, decent guy, good politician.
Well, I think he was in many ways. When I was a minister, he was actually quite engaging with me across the Department of Health when I was in the Home Office. Yeah. So, in that sense, I worked quite well with him. Look, I mean, the situation with the Conservative Party, thinking about that for a moment, is are they going to go to the Nigel Farage end of the spectrum, or are they going to come back to the centre where the elections traditionally are won? And I think they've got to make up their minds which one they want to do.
It was interesting, Lord Johnson, Boris Johnson's brother...
Joe.
Yes, gave a speech overnight saying that we need to learn the lessons overnight and move back to the centre where elections were won, like in 2010. But he's been pretty much a lone voice. And I suspect if I was to put money on it, which obviously nobody is encouraged to do, given everything that's been going on in recent weeks, I would say they're probably more likely to go towards the right.
Well, it depends on the makeup of the MPs and who's actually there.
But what we've seen so far of who's in there, I mean, the only sort of big one nation is that I can think of that's still there, Jeremy Hunt, Tom Tugendhat.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for me to comment on the Conservative Party particularly. I would much rather tell you the Lib Dems went from 8 seats to 70. But as far as the Tories are concerned, I mean, the issue is solution to me that the Tory MPs are generally more moderate than the Tory membership.
Labour peer Lord Glasman is here as well, and you're the man we should all be turning our eyes to, congratulating you on this today. What do you think this government will be like under Keir Starmer?
Well, I think you're going to see a Labour government. I never considered Tony Blair to be a Labour leader. I think it was, as that Thatcherism, globalisation was great, technology was great.
New Labour.
It was kind of revolting, and I think Keir's different. I think Keir is really different, and this is a proper Labour government. We understand that globalisation is over. He's asserted to explore the possibilities of Brexit, that we're not returning to the EU and hankering after that. This means we can have an industrial strategy. This means we can build houses. This means we can really support Ukraine in this war.
Morris,
that's the direction I think it's going to go in.
That, and that's an admirable direction. The thing that gets me, though, is the man is deadly dull. He's not. You don't look at him and say, you know, you've got...
Amen. Clement Attlee was the most boring man you could ever have met in your life.
Clement Attlee?
He was the Labour MP after the war. I know just a bit before you were born. And he nationalised steel, nationalised railways, national trust.
And he was a dullard.
A total dullard. Look, Howard Wilson wasn't really a delight in that way. Labour Prime Ministers aren't like Conservative, like Margaret Thatcher, is very presidential. That's what I mean. Blair was very presidential. Keir Starmer's going to be a Labour Prime Minister. We're going to see a cabinet, we're going to see arguments in the cabinet, arguments over direction, a much more traditional form of Labour politics.
See, very interesting that you say here, because Norman and Arlene, people often say Britain is going the way of America. Our elections are becoming more presidential. But if that was the case, I don't think Starmer would have won.
Well, I mean, Starmer won for all sorts of reasons, including the dislike of the Conservative Party. But I mean, look, I mean, the media plays its own role when they present it as, do you want, you know, these debates, Rishi Sunak versus Keir Starmer, the whole thing is made presidential, and the papers report it in that way. And the days of Clement Attlee, which were about policy, aren't there in the same. It's all a bit trivial, which is why
about politics, and what we're going to see is a lot more politics. There's going to be, you know, to a lot of the tensions within Labour are going to be those who hanker, like you, for returning to the EU, and those who are adamantly opposed to that. Those who say, oh, well, what we need to do is more knowledge economy, and those who say, no, we need vocational training. It's going to be a really political battle.
He said it's the end of performative politics, and that was really a dig, wasn't it, at these people that are all about sound bites, but not necessarily about policy.
Robert Buckland said as well, right at the beginning, the evening.
But, I mean, Maurice, the problem with that analysis is that we have AI and we have new technology coming forward. I mean, that's going to be the biggest challenge for me of government.
The key with AI is to integrate that with production. That's the whole point with AI.
Yeah, but you can't.
And so I think what you'll see, if my conversations mean anything within the party, is a real move to establishing a proper AI centre, maybe in Newcastle, and then that will be integrated into weapons production, because the war in Ukraine now demands, and we've got Trump coming, we're assuming Trump's going to win, so the UK is going to have to move it. So after Brexit, the paradox is the UK will lead Europe, and to do that we've got to have that kind of industrial strategy. So this is...
But it has to be a modern industrial strategy.
This goes back to George Brown. We haven't had one since George Brown in '64. It's time for that. The world has changed, but what you'll see is traditional Labour government.
Maurice is saying the world has changed and maybe politics has changed, but when you were First Minister in Northern Ireland, I thought you were very commanding, I thought you had a very good presence, but I didn't see you as personality politics or presidential in that way. Would I be right or wrong?
Well, I hope not, because it's a party system. I mean, you lead a party and you become... And, of course, Northern Ireland is different from the other devolved administrations because we have a mandatory coalition, so you're actually in a coalition with people who are diametrically opposed to what you believe in.
Well, we understand that in the Labour Party.
And we'll understand it more in the next few years.
Well, maybe we'll see more of that, Maurice, in the Labour Party.
It's always been that way. When I first went canvassing in 1987, and I knocked on the door, and this woman answered the door, and I said, are you voting for me? She said, you've done a fantastic job locally. I was in the council at the time. And I said, oh, you're voting for me? She said, no, I'm voting for Mrs Thatcher. And I said, but she's not on the ballot paper. And she said, I'm still voting for her.